Hello everybody, this is Alex from Hardcoin Guides, being my guide for Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge on Master Ninja difficulty. Today we are doing Day 3, and starting this chapter is actually going to be a lot of fun fights, but ending off this chapter, we're going to have one really annoying fight, and then we're going to be fighting the T-Rex. So, yeah, I actually do enjoy this mission, or day in general. Definitely a favorite of mine, along with Day 2. It's just that there's one particular fight that gets really annoying, and it's the giant group fight. And back then, when I was much, younger, playing Ninja Gaiden 3 for the first time, the T-Rex fight was one of my least favorite fights, and I always considered it super janky as hell. And turns out that that's actually not technically the case. It's a lot less janky than I used to think it was, and it's just a lot more manipulative than I would have guessed either. So, now it's time for the guide. And starting off, of course, we're going to be fighting these new versions of these fiends. I think they're fiends. I'm probably just going to call them like robots, because that's just what they seem to be like, I guess. I'm not exactly sure what they are, if they're actually fiends or if they're actually some type of other biomechanical type creature or whatever. But they're not too rough. This very first part is nothing new, really, in consideration of what you've kind of dealt with up to this point. As in, like, most of your fights are just going to be relatively about the same in terms of just regular mooks. Yes, the new enemy type isn't really technically regular, but it pretty much just acts kind of like just a regular mook in certain fights. But in other fights, they definitely prove to be quite dangerous. And my tips for fighting them, besides, of course, using UTs and what have you, is going for that triple square into triangle combo to do a nice, good delim. And that's something else I want to bring up real quick, too, is I kept calling it double square and then into the triangles, but no, I found out after playing the game again, because I should have done that earlier, is you hit square 3 times, or X if you're on Xbox, or whatever your console of play is, and then you hit triangle like a few times, and if you have level 2 sword, you should be able to do like a sort of windmill attack. That's what I kind of call it. I don't think that's exactly what it's called, but that's just pretty much what I go for. So anyway, coming up here, as soon as the camera starts to turn when you're walking up in this area, that's when the dogs are going to spawn, and then just take them out as you see fit, of course. And I usually just do the uppercut attack, with that guillotine slam move. Again, I don't know if it's actually called the guillotine slam. I know there's guillotine throw, but I don't think that's what it's called. But after that, you can just run back and then UT charge to get an insta-kill on them, or you can just continue to fight them normally. But coming up here, before you actually enter too far into this fight, make sure you use your bow to shoot down those turrets. I didn't find out that you can actually do that until like a little later into this video, which is why I'm kind of glad that I actually died. Originally, I think I died like trying to play Master Ninja mode, and then I had to do a new video for this one. Well, whatever the case is, I eventually found out that you could shoot those down before you even entered, and I'm like, oh, that's great. That's great for the guide. So this next part is going to be a little bit hellsome, mainly because of the fact of, the types of enemies that are going to spawn and then just how many of them could spawn. But this is not what I would consider the worst part of the chapter, but it's definitely one of those ones where it definitely will hurt like hell if you're not, quite aware of what types of enemies are going to be coming. So starting off, of course, you have just the regular soldiers, and then eventually you'll start spawning dogs in, and then I would say just focus on the dogs when they spawn, because regular enemies for the most part can just kind of be dealt with while you're dealing with dogs. If they just happen to get stuck inside of your attacks, then you're fine. Basically, the guys in white, you never really want to worry about them too much. They're usually just fodder. Dogs should be priority number 1 for this fight. But yeah, you can see right now I'm doing that triangle attack that I was talking about. And I'm going to be using it quite often in this video guide. So if you're looking for a nice combo to use yourself, then I would also recommend using that. And of course, Izuna drops if you can even get one going. Which, when it comes to the Black Spider Clan ninjas, or these other like super soldier type enemies, Splinter Cells, we could probably just call them that because that's what they remind me of. When it comes to those guys, Izuna drops are a lot harder to get going on them because they tend to block a lot of your attacks. But if you could get one in an uppercut for an Izuna drop, then, you're good. But for the most part, being super aggressive, at least in just, consistently attacking one specific of these soldier guys will definitely eventually delim them. And they're not too hard to fight, but when you get to Ultimate Ninja mode, yeah, they're going to block your attacks more often. But in Master Ninja mode, they're not incredibly hard. It's just when they're grouped up together that makes them kind of a bit more difficult, I guess. So coming up here, you know, you could always just run back downstairs to kind of just avoid the rocket shots if you wanted to. Or you can just always run up and go through the door and then just, you know, aim for the rocket guy and just kill him immediately. Because, you know, rocket enemies are also a high priority in my opinion. For those that haven't kept up with the guide. I usually can kind of consider certain particular enemies to be #1 priority, and that's usually like dogs, rocket enemies, and I think there's like a few others, but I cannot remember the name or remember which ones they were off the top of my head until we see them again. And coming up is going to be one of the more rougher fights, and if you hadn't died, you would have started this fight with doing a Falcon Dive attack, but I unfortunately died multiple times, so here we are. Starting off, you're gonna if you die like I did, then you're gonna be stuck in that little, you know, transition of loading back in, and then you're just gonna be pretty much just bombarded by an enemy, and you just want to go ahead and just, you know, attack as fast as you possibly can. So we're gonna be dealing with, of course, you know, the black robed alchemists here, and my strategy for fighting them all the time is typically just UTs. That's pretty much my entire guide kind of just revolves around. It's just mostly just UTs. And I do want to say something real quick, that I don't find using UTs as stupid or lame or novice or whatever you want to call it. Maybe novice to an extent, yeah, I guess. But I'm not here to give you an expert guide. I'm more so here to kind of give, you know, folks a guide that they could potentially also incorporate into their own gameplay if they're at a more less than expert level. Because I am in no way, shape, or form an expert. I would say I'm at least intermediate at best, if even that. I don't even know. I'm definitely not a beginner with this type of stuff, but yeah. So UTs, the hell out of the black robed, and of course you can use bow on them, but if they had their magic block up, then you pretty much just get blocked by one of their bow shots. So if you want to use bow on them, that's also something kind of fun to do too. And of course, when it comes to combos that I end up using a lot, it's of course the same triple square into triangle move. But after you clean out all the alchemists, and of course, you know, whenever the rocket guys spawn, you want to, you know, clean house with them too, of course. When it comes to the black robe guys, I typically just, you know, UT. But after they spawn, or after they're dead, ah man, I'm going off topics in so many different directions here. Once you finish all of them off, then we're gonna have another wave of enemies that are gonna spawn. So just take your time with finishing these guys, and just do what you can. Something else too is, whenever you're trying to do combos, they typically try to avoid your attacks. And if they just avoid your attacks, just dodge out of the way once they start, you know, coming back for you, and then just run, charge UT or whatever. Or, you know, if you're getting stuck like in a consistent pattern like I am there, then that's something else that you'll just have to break yourself out of. But of course, hitting heavy attacks typically has enough, for some strange reason, enough, I wouldn't say iframes, but it has just enough frames to kind of like, or just enough ability to get us away from getting grabbed by their attacks. And yeah, so there are like, I think 5, maybe 6 of these alchemists that do spawn, and they may seem troublesome, and they're going to be very troublesome at first, but once you kind of figure out how to just deal with them normally, then they're not incredibly bad. They're just really irritating, especially with Ione's fight. When you had to fight the actual sword versions of them, those ones are much worse than just the regular magic versions. I also don't really know the difference between the black and the white robed. I don't know if there's like a health difference or not, but there could be. So anyway, immediately after you take down the alchemist, I would also recommend going for an OT on the alchemist, the last one that you can do, or just all of them in general. And after you do that, make sure you start charging UT as fast as you possibly can, because these dragon fiends are going to spawn in. And Flying Swallow is pretty good against them. These guys are much different than like the regular purple big giant, like wingless dragon fiends that we fought, especially in Ione's chapter. So the fun thing about them, though, is being aggressive is really, really helpful for this. And, you know, using UTs and what have you can really get you a long way. So, yeah, when it comes to the Dragon Fiend guys, they're not as bad as they were like in Ninja Gaiden 2. So, Flying Swallow, you know, you could use. And then, like you saw there, I did, like, you know, some combo attacks on him and just basically just melted the dude. So, he had no way to kind of defend himself. They typically don't. It's usually like the purple ones that seem to always just eventually try to like fight back. And even if he was to try to hit you, you could always just try to dodge behind him or maybe dodge to the side of him. And of course, you know, after you take out them, you're going to have a rocket guy that's going to spawn. You take down him. And then after that, of course, there's going to be these guys that we're fighting right now. And essentially, I'm pretty much just trying to get either Bloody Rage or I'm just going for just typical Steel on Bone attacks. And since I have level 2 sword, I can only do, well, you know, 2 combos with the Bloody Rage. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And then after all is said and done, after that long and just arduous, lengthy fight, we can finally start making our way to a much more cooler section of the game. But yeah, that, in my opinion, was definitely one of the worst fights you have to deal with, just because of how long it is. And also with this section here, definitely don't get hit by the missiles, but you could mess up like a jump or two. I don't think the game's going to really, you know, I don't think it's going to kill you for that. As you saw right there, it didn't really do much to me when I, you know, fudged up the jump on the log. But coming up next is another fight with these guys with the helicopters. You're going to have to take down like 4 or 5 of them. So my trick with this is whenever the missiles are coming down, as in like from, you know, when you see like the missiles on the ground, they're, you know, have the marker. That's a good time as any to kind of shoot at the helicopters. And whenever a helicopter itself is starting to spawn in, they're usually going to shoot down missiles at you. So make sure you don't shoot them while they're shooting missiles at you, of course. Sorry, excuse me. But after you dodge the missiles the first time, you want to make sure you dodge all the missile shots the first time when a helicopter spawns. Dodge all of them and then just start spamming the hell out of that bow shot. And try to see if you can aim in toward the missile launcher themselves from the helicopters, because it seems to kind of just work out pretty well. Because it usually looks like you break them, so yeah, I'd say just, you know, wait. Let me back up real quick because we're fighting these guys. I'm getting kind of lost in my own thoughts here. So basically, with the helicopters, to kind of just re-explain again, essentially they're going to spawn down. And then just wait for them to shoot their missiles, and then wait for the missiles from, like, the top of, like, the other helicopter from, like, way above, or whatever missiles are dropping on you, just in general, to kind of, like, fall down. So that way, you know, you can't see, you know, between you and the helicopter. That way you can just take your shots. Or, you know, like I said, just wait until after their missile barrage is done, and then just immediately just spam the hell out of them, and then aim for the missile launcher part of the helicopter itself, and you should be good. But this part right here, this fight that we just now did, there's really no reason to kind of explain it. It's just pretty much straightforward. Just shoot the guys down on the jetpacks, shoot them down from the jetpacks, and then just get, you know, free easy kills. Because they don't do too much damage, and they also don't take too much damage. So they're relatively easy kills. Now, this part right here is a bit annoying, and for the most part, I recommend just going through it with, like, Flying Swallow. That way you could just kind of just avoid most of the attacks. You also do, I believe, get karma for killing these enemies. That I could be wrong on, but I believe you get karma for killing them. It's either you get karma from killing them, which it doesn't look like you get. It's either that or you get karma after you've beaten this section. And I think it's the latter. Where I'm pretty sure it's like you get karma points once you finish off all the enemies, including like the main hive. So, and when it comes to the hive, and just trying to find your way through this, of course you could use, you know, the hold in the stick to kind of find your next direction. Of course, you know, these enemies spawn and they kind of show you the way to go too. But something I tend to do a lot, as you see now, and why I'm shooting the bow so constantly, is because I'm trying to look for the hive itself and trying to get that you know, that lock on to kind of hit, so I can just kill them off immediately and just, you know, get a nice good glow going. And then once you come up here is when they're going to spawn a couple more enemies, and you do not have to fight these guys if you don't want to. I think I choose the option of just basically not fighting. And my trick with fighting these little bugs is, these little crickets, is just, you know, Flying Swallow through them, and then just, if you have a nice weapon that has like good AoE, that's also something that you could use to kind of just get yourself around it. But yeah, if you don't want to take on that fight to get that extra karma points, then don't. So next up is going to be a not super hard fight, but I did die a couple times. But once you're up this elevator shaft thing, you're going to want to instantly shoot down the rocket guys, because they're going to be, you know, really, really annoying with this next little section here. So make sure you always shoot down the rocket guys, you know, once you get to like another section in this particular fight itself. And once you get done with the first group of enemies, start aiming for the rocket guy upstairs, and then just stay downstairs, charge a UT once the rocket guy is dead, or just go upstairs and just take him out as you see fit, because for the most part these are relatively basic enemies, but you know, they can still be troublesome. So if you want to hide down there, that's perfectly fine. After that, after that second group, that second wave, you're going to want to run upstairs and you want to take out the next rocket guy first. And again, always try to make sure that, the rocket guy is priority number 1. Because you definitely don't want them to consistently spam you with rockets while you're trying to, like, do something to an enemy. And just, out of nowhere get hit by a rocket that could potentially do quite a bit of damage. And if you ever get to a position that you feel like you're getting surrounded by, just remember to run downstairs and just charge a UT if it just becomes a little bit too overwhelming. And I am not going to fault you for it. I've seen... Let's just say that there's a particular person that I have watched on YouTube for years, and then I was watching, I think it was a Ninja Gaiden 2 run, and they basically said that people that use UTs are pretty much just, not as good, I guess. That's the best way I can kind of put it. And I'm thinking to myself, now that's not a fair thing to say. Like, it's technically true, yes, that, using UT spam is considered a very lower end of, skill, I guess you could say. But I still feel like, who really cares? It's how the player wants to, play the game. You don't need to be good at this game to enjoy it, and that's kind of how I want to, partake in that conversation there. So, yeah, that's enough about that. I'm just, at this point, I don't know. Whenever I get mad at somebody, I just kind of dog on them for a bit, because stuff like that just pisses me off. Just saying that, you can't do this or that or the other. You have to be an expert at this game in order just to enjoy it on Master Ninja. I mean, just seems kind of a little dumb. Like, I'm not a master or an expert, and I enjoy Master Ninja mode, so... And you don't really need, an entire arsenal of just crazy combos to really get through most of this game. Because to me, a lot of this game is just puzzle fights, pretty much. You just kind of have to understand how a particular fight and what particular enemies spawn, and just know, decent enough combos, decent enough strikes and kills and what have you to kind of get through. And if you want to increase your repertoire of moves, then you always could. And again, like I said, I do not fault people for doing that. Also, for those that don't know or haven't been following along with the guide, the reason why I do the crystal skulls and I just kind of continue is that way, one, you can get karma and you can get Nimpo for it if you wanted to get that extra bit of Nimpo back. However, if you do replay it, you will lose that Nimpo that you had gained. So make sure that whenever you lose, you proceed if you want to. I'm not going to tell you whether or not you should or shouldn't. And something else I do too is with the crystal skulls, I use them to get health back, just full health. So I never really try to beat them. I just try to go for them. So coming up this next shaft is, of course, going to be another section with jetpack guys and just basic mooks once again. I think assassins might spawn, but for the most part, it shouldn't be anything too difficult. It's just really just kind of just dealing with the jetpack guys, getting away from these guys, and then just eventually start combo into them, or just, start doing some damage, get some OTs. That kind of stuff, or just wait for a SOB to kind of pop up. So really, at this point, it's really just kind of a case of just do your own thing, because when it comes to regular basic mooks, I don't have any better way of explaining how to fight them besides just like, I don't know, just hit them, because that's kind of just what they end up being, or try to trigger an SOB, and that's what I'm going to be doing to the fiends that are now going to be spawning in. So yeah. Now when the fiends are starting to spawn, I would recommend either running away, going for UT, like always, or I would recommend going for a SOB attack. And for those that, might not know, to trigger an SOB, there's a couple of ways to kind of just make it somewhat kind of come out. It doesn't seem like it's 100%, but it seems like it works a little often, and that is pretty much just not attacking the enemy, running away from them a little bit, and then just kind of going back. Once they start turning up that right attack and then going for that, dodge into triangle. I always just slide, dodge. That's what I always do for it. And charging a UT seems to also be something that usually ends up making them go into it. And even if you're charging UT, even if you don't get the full UT to come out, you can still let go of the triangle button or the white button, and then eventually just, when you're letting go of it, you can actually just get that SOB attack right after. And it works really well with, like, SOBs, I should say, SOBs work really well with the scythe. So if you have the scythe and you're doing triangle moves, that's a really good move to kind of just trigger into an SOB without even trying to do it. Like, triggering them into doing it themselves, an attack, you know, that's a different story, but actually getting the SOB to land, you know, the triangle attacks for the Scythe are really good at doing that, so. Next up with this next section, you know, once again, regular mooks. I would also recommend, of course, taking out the rocket guys immediately after you jump down. Just run from one corner to the other and just wipe them out first. Don't worry about the regular enemies. And then after that, these guys are going to spawn. They kind of spawn a little bit early in consideration of story-wise, but they do spawn on Master Ninja mode. And as you can see, I just pretty much just run around, save Nimpo, and then use it on whenever I basically need it for these guys. If you don't want to use Nimpo, that's 100% fine. I wouldn't, you know, go against it, or, you know, whether or not you want to use it or not is completely up to you on that part. But I just kind of use it because I want to health, because that's just how I am. So, taking out these guys, as you can see, I'm mostly using Dragon Sword. So, the trick with these guys, and you can block a lot of the gorilla attacks, by the way, except for, like, that big old attack. Pretty much just, once again, UTs. But this is something else, too. To trigger a Steel on Bone, at least with the gorilla chimeras, to trigger the gorillas to SOB is being aggressive and attacking them and letting them block your attacks. They'll eventually, like, do a sort of, I wouldn't say a parry, but they'll do, like, a... What's that thing called? Starts with an R. Oh, damn it. Oh, I'm forgetting the name of it. Basically, I guess I could just say they just retaliate. They pretty much just knock you back after they block your attack. Once they do that, they sometimes, if not most of the time, will go into an SOB, and immediately right after, make sure you slide into a SOB. I keep calling SOB both the attack and the defense one, and that's not the case. Something else with SOBs, once again, I should explain, is de-limbed enemies typically kind of, you know, let you into it. But I did say in, like, I think at my episode 1 that I was not going to go too in-depth with explaining these things too much, but here I am doing it again. But that's just how it is. So this next area, of course, I just pretty much just go for SOBs for the most part. You know, enemies in this section tend to do it a lot more often, and I just try to save up my Bloody Rage to at least get to Bloody Rage 3, just because, why not? And back to the other Chimera type that I can kind of explain, or Homunculus, or whatever they are. So with the snake versions, those ones are a little bit more trickier. They're a lot less tanky than the other ones, but they're a lot more trickier to kind of deal with. So with them, I kind of just do like a basic, simple combo on them, and then run away, and then just try to wait out. And pretty much, for the most part, either I do a combo on them, try to get them to go into it, you know, the red attack, or I just essentially run away and then wait for that then. And I usually, for the most part, just focus on the gorilla versions, because I feel like they're a lot more dangerous than the regular snake ones. And we'll definitely get more into that when we have to deal with them once again in a later chapter. But yeah, when it comes to gorillas, just to kind of, you know, reiterate again, I recommend just pretty much trying to be aggressive and attacking them from the front, or just, you know, waiting for an SOB chance. That's pretty much what I wait for all the time, or just go for UTs. And if you were to attack them aggressively and they were to block your attack, let them block your attacks, and then immediately after, you know, they retaliate and try to parry you, then that's when you just dodge and then go for that SOB, if it's available at that time. So, yeah, fun fights, really. I mean, I honestly think that chapter... Well, this is day 3, it's not chapter, but this is like my 4th episode still, but I still consider it kind of like a chapter 4, but for what it's worth, yeah, I just call it day 3. Day 3 ended up actually going from like one of my least favorite days to one of my personal favorite days, and just because of the types of fights that you have to do, it's just a lot of fun. So coming up here, you can either dodge that guy or just get hit. I mean, I got hit a couple of times, so it happens. But I recommend just trying to dodge. Just, you know where he's going to spawn, dodge him after, and then just, you know, attack him. And then jump down here, start charging UTs, because for me that works the best when it comes to taking out the ghosts. And immediately, as soon as the rocket guy spawns, I'm going to go ahead and just start shooting a rocket that way, or a bow that way. Also, you know, aiming in with the bow does allow you to see ghosts. So for those that didn't know, you can use the bow to kind of see ghosts and shoot them with that. Now, when it comes to the rocket guys themselves spawning in, they tend to kind of spawn in at various intervals of how many enemies we've killed, it seems. So after you've killed a few enemies, make sure you kind of look in the distance to see if you're... look at each of these corners and just aim with your bow for that auto aim to kind of kick in, and then see if you can actually lock on to a rocket guy. Or, you know, just see the rocket or, you know, hear the rocket coming, of course. That's, you know, common sense. But I have to explain everything that's common sense because I, myself, do not have any. And I therefore lack the ability to, you know, remember, like, hey, people have common sense. You don't need to explain things like this, Alex. But I do it anyway because that's just how I am. And I like to talk a lot, so there's that. So after you've wiped out at least a good majority of these guys, the black-robed alchemists are going to spawn in. And I tried going up here to see if I could maybe get like an advantage on them, but that didn't really work out as well. Yes, I did get a nice UT on them, and it's something that you can kind of look into yourself if you're curious, if you want to try it out yourself. I don't recommend against it or recommend using it either way. I'm kind of neutral on that stance on going up the stairs. I don't think it really matters. Now, something that could, I guess, be taken as advantage is it probably could be advantageous just because of the fact that it's kind of a choke point, so you could theoretically go up those stairs, let the guys run up there, and then just charge UT and just slam into them, or just, you know, whatever you know that works best for you when it comes to these enemies. That spin attack right there, I'm not exactly sure how I pulled it off. I think I did like, I think it's one of those, you circle around the analog stick and then press triangle. But yeah, that's the thing with me though with this game is I don't know the full list of moves. There's a lot of moves in this game. It's almost like it's almost as big as a goddamn Tekken character in terms of, you know, how many moves they have. Maybe even more, I don't know, but it's just a lot, so I haven't really learned a lot of them. But yeah, when it comes to, again, the black robe guys, in case anybody happened to skip forward or whatever, I just UT the hell out of them. I usually don't go for combos, and even if I did, it'd just be like the triple square into triangle combos. Triple square into like triple triangle is pretty much what I kind of do, because at this point I think I have level 2 sword, and eventually, coming up soon, before the dragon fiends that we get to fight, and before the T-Rex, I go for a level 3 upgrade. So coming up in this next room, dogs are once again going to spawn. This one is kind of hard to get past. I don't know exactly how to get past them. I usually get grabbed every time. If I had to guess, maybe stay near the glass and just kind of just know when to dodge perfectly. That'd probably be my best guess. Like, stay near the glass that they're at, so that way, you know, it kind of maybe goes over you while you dodge is what I would think would work, but I'm not sure. But I typically just, when it comes to this particular section itself, just go for UTs. And if there happens to be like 1 or 2 dogs left, then I just do the uppercut move, which is, of course, the square triangle into, you know, square move. And then after the dogs are done, which that can be kind of a tough part, actually. That can be kind of a tough part, but I've done that part so many times that it's just become kind of just dumb at this point. Dumb easy, I should say. Not dumb itself, because the game's not dumb. I actually like this game a lot. Okay, yeah, the story is a little bit, you know, weird, but when it comes to Ninja Gaiden, I'm not actually here for the story, as sad as that might sound. I actually prefer playing the games. I've never liked the Ninja Gaiden stories as much as, say, like God of War or even DMC. That's my own opinion, and, you know, everyone is, of course, allowed their own opinion. It's not that I hate the Ninja Gaiden stories. I'm just saying in particular that I've never been too fond of them myself. Kind of like with Bayonetta, I've never really cared too much about Bayonetta's story, but I love the gameplay. And I don't want people to think that I hate the game by any means. I don't. It's just, you know, I'm weird, okay? I'm really weird. So I upgraded level 3 sword, and I come back here after the camera shifts and start charging for a level 3 UT. You just want to do like one simple slide dodge back, and as soon as you see either a wing or anything just get chopped off, immediately go for that OT. Do not use Nimpo. Try to save your Nimpo for the T-Rex fight. And I think it's just 2 dragon guys, but yeah, go for a level 3 charge. One of them is bound to get delimbed, hopefully. If they don't, just either be super aggressive and try to go for those chops with the heavy attacks, or run back, you know, UT again, or even just use bow, because bow seems to work relatively, you know, pretty well too. So this is the T-Rex fight. This one's kind of a little weird, and I wouldn't say it's super janky, but it's kind of just pretty much straightforward. If you attack the foot, it does damage, at least until a certain point in this fight. And there's a lot of attacks I want to explain real quick. So this attack right here, just keep running, and then every time that she tries to go for like every time that she gets close to hitting you, just, slide dodge out of the way. And just always kind of like predict how many times she's going to do it. And just always keep your eyes, on her, of course, while she's going for that charge to see if she actually, slams on the ground. Also, going for the head is much preferred, but for damage-wise. But I will say this. I also recommend not going for the head when she's down until this part, because you pretty much have to. And when you go for the head, make sure you do only just a few attacks. Don't get greedy. Just do like 2 to 3 attacks and then run away. Do not get greedy on this fight because you will get hit. So when it comes to like when she's not robotic or, steeled up, going for the legs while she's down could also work out wonders too. You might not do as much damage as you would want to do, but she can't grab you with her mouth, and you have plenty of time to kind of just do a little bit few more attacks before she does a tail swipe. And if you do go for legs, she typically goes for that tail swipe anyway, until at least, of course, when she turns into metal, and that's when you have to go for the head. And like I said, when you're attacking the head while she's down, you want to only do like just very few amount of attacks. Again, don't get greedy because she can grab you with her mouth, and that can do a lot of damage, and that's something you don't want. And when it comes to the tail swipe, just dodge like toward the camera. Like try to dodge away from like the overall AoE itself. If you can't dodge away, then just try to like dodge jump over it. And that's just kind of my best advice for the tail swipe. You pretty much just have to predict. That's practically how this fight goes. There's really no better way for me personally to kind of explain it, rather than just like you just have to kind of just. You have to think ahead. You have to think like, okay, she's either going to go for a head grab or she's going to go for a tail swipe. So I'm going to be prepared for either or. And I usually just kind of prepare for the tail swipe because it seems to be the one she goes for the most. So this next section, the game's going to give you a chance to kind of just dodge out of the way. Try and take it. And then once you do dodge, get some nice damage off on. And now we're pretty much in phase 2. This is where things are going to get a little bit more rough. So, as you can see, I'm sticking to one direction while I'm running around. And that's essentially because I'm trying to make it to where she goes in a very particular direction and I don't accidentally get caught in it. I'm always on the run and always on the move. You don't want to stand around in this fight, because if you stand around this fight, you could immediately get hit, and that's not something good. And also, try to keep your distance, at least until she lands on the ground. Now, I know all this stuff is relatively common sense, but for somebody like me, who's just a complete dork, I typically don't really realize that until after I figured it out. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to just keep dodging away. But I don't have any other better way to explain this besides just stay as far away as you possibly can, because you'll eventually trigger her into going into that running attack. And if you could trigger that, that's great, because after that, she's just going to run around, dodge it completely, let her fall on the ground, go for some head strikes. Again, don't get too greedy. Go for like 2, maybe 3 hits, and then just run away. Take your time with this fight, because it can kill you if you're, too quick on the nose, and that's something you don't want to do. Unless you know this fight, really well, then of course, do what you want. But for me, that's how I do it. Hopefully, visually, I explained it better than I did audio. But anyway, that's the end of the episode. So see you guys for the next chapter. Take care, everybody.